as with any topic, we have to explore what do we mean by psychology, what do we mean by health. And we were just discussing the fact that AI programs could probably duplicate most of the human functions that we know of, theoretically, except the internal ones, though. Because how do you duplicate a feeling? How do you duplicate compassion? How do you duplicate sadness? How do you duplicate depression? How do you duplicate excitement, happiness, joy, and so on and so forth?
Fatigue.
So these are internal complex things. And what we've become used to is putting everything in the quantitative area. This happened from Descartes, actually, in the Western world in the 17th century, where 3 dimensions in the universe were reduced to 2. That is a dualistic system. And then everything became mechanical. And then in science, well, if you know every variable, you can predict everything. If you know everything that's happening, then everything is completely deterministic. Now, in a way, we have to acknowledge this understanding of determinism, but we have to introduce a qualitative dimension to it, not just a quantitative dimension. And so when people look at things, look at life purely from the quantitative point of view, the data point of view, then they're missing the fact that there's a subtle world, internal world, which is entirely individual. And the only way we know that we share these things is because somebody also says, oh yes, I was happy with this, or I had this, and we see similar experiences. Otherwise, there's no actual objective evidence about what you're feeling, except what you're feeling. So what is that to do with a world of causation? So there was a man called Norman Cousins. Norman Cousins was a very famous journalist and also a humanitarian. He did a lot of humanitarian work and so on. But from a very young age, he was suffering from a disease which the doctors had said, you have a 1 in 500 chance of surviving this. And so it was really to do with the connective tissue. And then he also had heart problems. He also had arthritis on the top of this and so on. So many, many difficulties he had. But beyond the first diagnosis, he lived some 36 years more. And he thought, let me see if I can treat myself. If everybody is saying we'll give up on you, then I have nothing to lose. And he also was a specialist in human behavior. He had made a study of that, psychology, human behavior. And he felt very, very strongly there was a close connection between the way we feel, this qualitative aspect that I'm talking about, how we feel and what we think, and the condition of the human body. Now, even logic will tell us it has to be so, because we have some good examples. Supposing I describe in graphic detail your most favorite food, then you will start to salivate. Supposing I describe a lemon, then the mouth will pucker. So imagination, image making, immediately gives a response in the human physical. So therefore, we know that what we imagine and what flows through the mental field has its corresponding effect. And in yoga as a philosophy, we feel, in fact we state, that the body is a result of your thought. You are your creator of your own circumstance, your inherent desires, this qualitative aspect that you bring up that is intangible, that only you know. These are the roots of effects. This is the cause. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we are told that the root is different. What do we mean by the root? Do you have an example? Yes, Supposing you are friends with a goat on a farm and you both eat the same food. Well, you won't grow horns and the goat won't be able to give lectures. There's something internal which gives a formula, an individual formula to make an individual species. What is the internal thing that drives it? Philosophy tells us it is the more subtle area, on the basis that the more subtle is the more causal. And therefore it makes complete sense that whatever we have, whatever movement is there on the most subtle level, namely the mind, will have its effect on the physical. Not just the physical body. Why not just the physical body? Because we have to take into account the totality of everything. Matter is one, energy is one. There's only one energy. Now the ancient yogis understood this, they all knew it, and Swami Vivekananda, who was friends with Nikola Tesla, wanted him to come up with some kind of evidence for that, some scientific formula. And Mileva Einstein was there, and she probably got that, and she was friends with Nikola Tesla as well. And you see in the paper on special relativity, in the appendix there, the famous equation comes out that Swami Vivekananda was looking for, namely that energy E, the sum total of potential energy, is equivalent to mass or matter. And what that means is everything is energy, and the thing that makes things heavy is energy. So whatever is being used, whether it's a mechanical car, whether it's a rocket going to space, whether it is the sun who's in our core is transforming hydrogen into helium, whether it is a galaxy that is spinning, whether it is the lungs which are moving, whether it is all the cells that are being repaired, whether it is the food that is being digested, it is all one central energy expressed in different ways, different kinds of outlets. The fundamental potential energy manifesting itself in a kinetic way, in a radiational way, in an electromagnetic way, in a nuclear way. And the yogis figured this out long, long ago. They left out nuclear energy, but we only put that as a sixth recently. But still they had examined it well and figured it all out. They also figured out the fact that anything which is an aggregate is liable to change, liable to destruction. Anything that joins together. Anybody who buys an old car, let us say, 20 years old, will know it's not going to be run in exactly the same pristine condition as when first bought 20 years ago. Rust comes in, mechanical wear comes in because of friction. You have to replace parts. You have to spend extra tension. So vintage cars are fine in rallies, where you can look after them in a special way, but for day-to-day going to the office, etc., is not appropriate. So we also have something like a car, and we roam around on the earth with it, and we sit on a planet, and we have free trips around the zodiac. And every year is a free trip around the zodiac. Well done. It's nothing to do with you. It's just you had no choice in it, except, of course, that your will to have a specific environment, be it physical and beyond the physical and objective, all comes from an inner desire. And the most fundamental desire we have is the desire. We have some kind of model which is there in our mind, a superhuman, a super person. So we have some kind of ideal. In fact, one of the theological evidences for a God is that that must be the highest ideal we have, and therefore having such a high ideal, then it must be evidence that such a thing exists. Otherwise, why would we ever imagine something that was way, way beyond us? All the secrets of even primitive religions was that there's something beyond the scope, transcending the scope of the limited human, and something that we can rely on. And then that develops into a system. The system is, if we adjust and go according to certain behaviors, then we will discover this super being, this super perfection being that in the English language we call God. So there's some inner drive within us. Is it only within us? Well, how did the physical become the physical? All the cells of the body are eukaryotic. That means they have an inner nucleus. And there are prokaryotic beings that don't have the nucleus. And the common understanding, well established now, well researched, and so therefore accepted, is that the eukaryotic cell with the nucleus was because certain prokaryotic cells merged their mitochondria and made a fusion and agreed to join forces. And then that became duplicated, more and more and more. And a thrust toward perfection arrives at man. This is what we commonly call evolution. Evolution, a series of changes, no doubt. And we can register some of those changes. And some of them are very urgent and very quick, and others are slow. The Cambrian period of time showed a vast surge of species all of a sudden coming. And this, of course, upsets a certain aspect of evolution attributed to Darwin, who really felt it should be progressive and should be gradual. And so punctuated equilibrium was a term that was invented to explain this, that at certain moments in time there's just a surge, but it doesn't explain why there should be a surge. You see, the why question gets missed, gets left out of some of the important mysteries. How did the universe begin? Supposing there was a Big Bang, do we know how it arrived, why it arrived, where did it come from? Supposing there is a series of changes, chemical changes that arrive as organic cells, do we know how that happened? Well, Vedanta says, yes, we know how it happened. There's an urge, there's an internal urge that is driving us. So what has this got to do with psychology? What has this got to do with health? I come back to my example. This man who was suffering, he did two things. He dosed himself heavily with vitamin C. I don't know if that's good for him or whether it's just expensive urine, but anyway, he dosed himself with vitamin C. That was the one thing he did. Second thing he did was he decided, I want to watch comedies. And he discovered a belly laugh, not just a laugh, not just a smile, but tears rolling down your face. 10 minutes of viewing films like that had the effect of taking his pain away for several hours. That was the ratio. 10 minutes to 2 hours. That was the ratio. And then whenever the pain came back again, he would repeat it. And ultimately he got cured. And he attributes this to the fact that he was good-humored, that he changed his whole mental frame on the basis that maybe any elements of depression or just normal circumstances, just chance circumstances where a person becomes ill. And even when a person becomes ill, it works the other way around. It affects your mood. When you have the flu or something and your nose is blue and mucus is running everywhere and you have a temperature, don't tell me that you're very happy about it. So there's a story anyway that it comes from Buddhism. There was actually a story of a Zen master who lived in a certain village.
Once upon a time.
Yeah, and once upon a time it happened, yes. and so there was a ruthless warrior who attacked the country, and everyone fled except the monk. And when the invading general asked his soldiers to search the village, they reported to him, there's nobody there except this one lone master, this one lone monk. Otherwise there was not even a soul in the village. And so the commander went to the monk and said, don't you know that I can run over everything without blinking an eye and destroy you? And the monk calmly replied, and I can be run over without my blinking an eye. So the monk has no anxiety, the monk has no fear, because he never saw a situation, however grave, as a threat. That means his perspective on life was different. Why? Because he was a Zen master. Well, what's the hope for us? Well, a monk, a Zen master will, first of all, meditate. And meditation will be the great, great panacea for stress. We have to learn to react to stressful situations. We have to get the concept of ashram. Shrama means a stressful situation. Ashram means the opposite. You do away with it. So all the various stages in ancient Hindu social life were all called ashramas, designed to remove your stress. Not that there won't be stressful situations, not that there won't be threatening situations, difficult situations. Yes, that's part and parcel of life. It's designed like that. It's not designed to be smooth. But you see, if you are traveling on a rocky road built with thorns, you put tough shoes on. If you are traveling on a road with so many potholes, you travel in a four-wheel drive. If it's cold, you put warm clothing on. You respond to the circumstances because you can, because you have the potential to do it. And it begins with shifting the attitude. And so, as long as you shift the attitude and you fill the mind with benign things, it will simply reflect in every part of whatever is connected with you, namely, and first of all, the body. So the body is the first to react to any thought and how rapidly thought comes. So controlling this stream, which we call thought, is very important if we want any kind of health. The body and mind are not separate. There's a beautiful way of saying it that Swami Vivekananda gives in his Raja Yoga, that the body is gross mind and the mind is subtle body. There is no separation between these two. One is subtle and one is gross. And you cannot affect one without affecting the other. You cannot have flu without affecting your mood, and you cannot have good health without a joyful disposition. So this man, Norman Cousins, he watched these films, had a belly laugh, and he registered. Immediately the pain goes away, and it lasts for some 2 hours. 10 minutes of it relieves all the pain for 2 hours. Supposing we were able to do that all the time. Now, of course, he was using the external stimulus of a film and responding to it. But we also are watching the film of life. And we're not interpreting it as some kind of play, some kind of comedy that will come and go. We're looking at it not from an adult point of view. We're looking at it, generally speaking, from a child's point of view. What's the difference? A child doesn't really have such a great sense of morality. It has to be taught. But the adult has it. The adult has what is called a conscience. It knows what is right. It knows what is wrong. It knows what is good. It knows what is harmful. And to follow that, just that small twang of conscience, knowing, and we have the option. We have the option to ignore it and go along with it, or to stop it and change it. And every moment we have this option, we just have to exercise it, and we have to do it in a stress-free way. Otherwise, we're adding to it. So these are some ways, learning how to react to stress. Also, having some discipline. That means exercising your free will, inserting positive joy. We have this idea that tapas, or this discipline, is something that is austere, something that we don't like. But that's not really the meaning. The meaning is supplementing everything, sublimating everything with a joy. And naturally, the mind wants to move toward that. If you want to overcome any addiction, you replace it with a better addiction. Much better to be addicted to God or to the highest. So St. John of the Cross will tell us, always seek for preference. Not the easiest, but the hardest is another approach. Not the most charming, but the most boring. Not what pleases, but what repels. Not what consoles, but rather what afflicts. Not what saves trouble, but what gives us trouble. Not the most, but the least. And then, of course, there's meditation itself. There is so much evidence today, so much research today that tell us the beneficial effects, the calming effects of meditation. And not only bringing in joyful ideas in meditation, and that affects the body, but detaching as well, detaching from the body completely. And that is what the Zen master was doing. He saw, I have the capacity to detach because it's only an instrument. Like a glove, you can put your hand in, you can take it out. So what's our difficulty? Our difficulty is this thing called egoism, where we identify with not only the body, but the mind, these two combined, the psychophysical, instead of using these as instruments. The purpose is instruments, it's instrumental, because our overall purpose is, you can say in theistic language, a vision of God, or in philosophical language, the attainment, the discovery of the inner self. Then we can take things easy. We can learn to relax. We can learn to emulate the heart. The heart pumps, it rests. You've heard me often say that. It's a peristaltic thing. It pumps, it rests. It pumps, it rests. It doesn't go on holiday. It's always moving in a muscular way. And what moves the heart? I always remember somebody saying, this thing called God, I can't really relate to it. I have no idea what it is. And so, I'm stuck. So I said, well, please locate your pulse. Now, if you press in there, what will you find? Yes, I can find it. Good, I'm relieved. Means you're alive. Next. Where is it coming from? Oh, it's coming from the heart. The heart is pumping. Good. What's pumping the heart? Now, some may say it's life, but that doesn't really give the answer. Some people may say it's energy, but it doesn't really give the answer. It's only glossing over the surface. What is the fundamental thing that is creating the pulsing thing? What is the thing that we call life? It is energy. And this energy is not physical. It's manifested as physical, but no scientist can ever tell you what energy is. They can tell you what it does, but not what it is. You'll get a Nobel Prize if you manage to find out what is energy, but we know what is energy. It's the divine movement. It's the divine movement that comes and starts reflecting all the movements, starts creating motion everywhere. It is prana acting on akasha in our philosophical language. Actually, it's Sankhya language. So it is energy acting on matter. But energy is only the energetic dimension of it, the equivalent of it. And akasha is nothing we can pin down. In fact, it's called avyakta. It's one of the unmanifest. And all we can know about it is a low state of vibration. And that low state of vibration, where is it coming from? An original vibration. It comes out for us as Om. So this initial vibration sets off the entire thing. And even ahead of that, we have the potentiality of it, the creative potentiality of it, that from eon to eons starts vibrating. And every drama, cosmic drama, is replicated in our own cycle of life. So that when we go into a deep sleep, which philosophers will rather say resting in the divine, is the area of creativity, must be the maximum area of creativity, from which all these vague forms come called dream. And the least real thing is what you're deeming reality. And science is baffled by this, because science, that is physics, will tell us actually the real thing, the real most reliable thing, the foundation of everything will be in the mysterious world of quanta packets, visualized like that, behaving like points or corpuscles of matter, and yet also waves. From our point of view, particles. From the fundamental point of view, waves. How can you have this duality? It's still a head-scratching moment on one of the greatest unsolved mysteries, and yet thoroughly reliable. So we were talking about artificial intelligence, for example, even the computers and so on. It's all running on quantum energy. It's all part of the quantum world. It works, but why does it work? How does it work? No idea. Richard Feynman, the famous physics man, very famously said, if you understand equivalent to this, if you understand quantum mechanics, nobody understands quantum mechanics, actually. He said maybe in his lifetime, 12 people, dozen people had some kind of better idea about it, but actually you don't. And you can see the echo in the Kena Upanishad. If you think you know it, you don't know it. This is the mysterious world. But it's not the world that we live in. It's not the world we experience. We're experiencing the crystallization of it. And from the philosophical point of view, from the progressive spiritual point of view, it is the most unreal. And we deem it to be the only reality, particularly if we live in a quantitative world rather than a qualitative and quantitative world. So we can take on another understanding which will help us, and that is the heroic understanding, where we challenge life, knowing its ephemeral nature, knowing it as a play of waves. We then face it with tremendous excitement and a sense of adventure and say, come on, give me your most difficult curveball, and I'll face it fearlessly, for what is there to fear? A person who knows this and understands this has absolutely no fear, no doubts, and is not tempted by the ups and downs that will never give permanent satisfaction, and yet hooks us in always, only because we never learn to outgrow it. As we grow older, maybe our wisdom, our maturity kicks in, or our compulsions get entrenched. It's up to us. So in all of this, it requires a shift of attitude. It requires for us to take hold of a situation and decide that we will see things in a more realistic way, in a more adventurous way, a joyful way, so that we enjoy life. Very often people say, oh, religious people, renunciation. You're all talking about renunciation. Yes, but renunciation of what, you see? We're renouncing something that is giving us sorrow. Thank you very much. You're not renouncing it. That is why you're miserable. So, what are some of the thoughts regarding health, healing, and the state of mind, the psychology? First of all, we have to register everything to the divine account. All energy is divine energy, including the essential transformational mechanical process where food, a potato, gets transformed into blood and cells. In other words, the stomach. So, what is the fact? We put it in theistic terms. God sits in the stomach as gastric fire and digests our food. We say this in our tradition. As soon as we eat the meal, before the meal, we say that the highest principle, that is Brahman is in the offering, is in the contents, it's in the cooked thing. It's offered into the fire of digestion. It's offered, it's the hand that's offering it. It's entirely a ritualistic act. With this in mind, everyone who sees this Brahman in all actions goes unto Brahman. That's it. Goes unto Brahman. You see it all in all actions. Yeah. So you're putting food into this entrance here. There's a whole manufacturing process. Raw material going in here, going to the crushing department. Yeah. Elderly fishermen, and they both had, false teeth, dentures. And the one thought, I'll play a joke on my friend. So he took his dentures out. The one man leant over, and lost his dentures in the ocean. And his friend put his own on the end of his line and brought it up and said, oh, I think I found it. And the man said, no, they're not mine, and threw it back into the sea. So there we are. We have to be careful not to interfere with other people's misfortune. So this manufacturing process goes on, a kind of conveyor belt. You swallow it, and in the meantime, chemicals are being added in specific doses. And particularly, if we like food, it stimulates the doses, and this is where the psychological comes in. Because the taste of the food is entrenched in our memory banks in the brain and recognizes it and stimulates the whole thing. But the non-quantitative portion, the qualitative portion, is the imagination of the taste. And that imagination then stimulates it. And so these chemicals are there from a central organizing control room that says, come on, this food is tasty. Please respond with the right chemicals, the right enzymes. And then with that half-digested thing, it goes into a big pot. Some people's pots are bigger than others. Some people have a pot belly, others not. But anyway, it goes in with a control valve there and goes in and gets mixed with hydrochloric acid. It breaks down stimulates pepsin and various other things. And there's a stomach lining that prevents that acid from going into it. And then that gets passed on then to another coiled manufacturing process we designed just as airport queues are now designed. Because of the quantity of people going through security, you go through a zigzag. So the small intestine is designed all squashed up like a zigzag. And that has the capacity to add more enzymes, digest food, absorb the water and things like that, transfer the nutrients on to the bloodstream and so on, a whole series of mechanisms. The wonder of health is not in the diseased body, it's in the healthy body. that every single cell of the body contributes towards the body's health. Even at the cellular level, we know now that the central nucleus of a cell, the DNA, is not the operative thing, it's only the architectural structure. And it only gives out the instructions, but it only takes instructions from the entire cell. And we have yet to figure out, physiology has yet to figure out the precise mechanisms that go on, except to say that if you extract the DNA, the nucleus of the cell, what is now called the genome, but is falsely so, and put it in a petri dish and leave it for 1,000 years, it won't do anything. It relies on the entire cell because it's made from protein and it manufactures protein. So the vicious circle. And when something fails in its replication, such as in the RNA, something fails there, the whole cell comes and takes charge. A whole complex of fail-safe mechanisms, so that when one thing fails, another is there. So anything that escapes the system, such as a random mutation, will not be good for evolution. Evolution meaning will not be good for the propagation of the species, the continuation of it, survival of it, and it won't be good for any advantageous changes. Now that's a big, big difference, because the 1970s said, no, it's all our evolution is really to do with random changes, because our only explanation for life is randomness. It has to be by chance. We can't put in God there. It has to be qualitative and it has quantitative, and it has to be by chance. Mathematically unfeasible. Now we know from physiology and physiologists and experimentation that actually there are sophisticated mechanisms. When you take something vital away, there are replacements, and it hardly changes the rhythm of things. And that the actual intelligence of the cell is the incoming and outgoing flow in the membrane, but all other structures within the cell, organelles and what have you, all contribute horizontally toward the vitality of the cell. Now the next question is, what is life? What keeps that going? And the great physicist Schrödinger, he has this series of lectures here in Dublin, What is Life? A short book, maybe only 100 pages, but most profound. And there he explores things, and he explores things from the point of view of the Upanishads. Wonderful. So this simple thing that we ignore, that we know nothing about digestion, we simply put the food in here and hope that it gets transformed somewhere else. And we don't worry about the waste disposal units. We don't worry about the aeration units of the lungs. We don't worry about the chemical transfer of, ATP and so on, stimulating a kind of metabolism, creating a kind of energy from raw food. A red tomato going in comes out as black hair or white hair somewhere else. We have no idea, really, the magic of this conversion. We stand in wonder at it. When most people go to a doctor, they go in ignorance. They have no idea about their anatomy and physiology. They take it on faith, what the doctor says. Surely, if we are running around with a machine, we should surely know a little bit about how it works. And in doing that, we're exploring something of great, great beauty. This state of appreciation as an instrument, a very refined, sophisticated, complex instrument, surely contributes to the health, our mental health, and therefore our physical health. So when we digest food, we shouldn't do it absent-mindedly. We should do it with an element of deep appreciation for the whole wonder of digestion. And the Lord is digesting that not just for you, but for every single creature, including insects. What a glory! That alone will surely elevate the mind. But why doesn't it do it? Because we never noticed it, we never contemplated it, we never thought about it. And the advantage of scripture and a living commentator on it that has the capacity to discriminate, to assimilate, to disperse it, to enlighten. With that, we understand these things that act as a reminder about the glory and beauty of what is all around us that we ignore because we are not looking at life as a belly laughing producer, a kind of comedy show. Because really, when you look at it, should really have a good laugh. Then you may say there are tragic things going on, we can't laugh at that. That's true. But at least it moves us to a feeling of helpfulness or a feeling of empathy. At least it leads us to tears of compassion. And those tears of compassion are also purifying. The body itself doesn't have any discrimination. It takes whatever food you feed in. The stomach processes poison as well as food. And so the creative part of the mind is not the discriminating portion. You are the discriminating power. You have the power to take in the food that is useful and reject the food that is not. So choose right and choose the right thought. The real mental and physical healing doesn't depend on your willpower. And when we talk about I'm tired at the end of the day because of the things that I did in the office, intellectual work does not increase the metabolism. No energy is expended. Energy is physical, and no energy is expended in the thinking process. So we may, but in anxiety, yes. Anxiety is the thing that makes you tired. Then you may say, but I'm just overwhelmed with anxiety, I don't know how to change it. First of all, you have to assert, I have the capacity to change it. Second, you have to change it. How? By watching the state of the mind at any given moment and putting in the highest, most joyful thoughts, just like the man watching the comedies. And you will feel good. You see the ratio. 10 minutes of belly laughing, belly moving joy removes all pain for 2 hours, was what he was saying. Up to 2 hours, he was saying. Distracted thinking makes us tired. If you can do your work with an enraptured way, you'll need less food to start with. And you'll need less sleep, and there'll be less wastage of energy. There'll be no strain. When doing one job and wanting to do another or be somewhere else, it creates friction, and that makes us tired. Therefore, try to do with rapture everything that you do. And you may say, but I have a monotonous job, or I don't exactly like my job. I could do it if I changed my job. Not at all. Because the hand that moves, the thoughts that move, the decisions that have to be made, the speech that is required, is all part of the divine rapturous play. It's not an arduous thing, only if our attention is pitched toward the future. What if, instead of focusing on the glory of the movement of energy now, the movement of energy, it doesn't matter if it's sweeping the floor or if it's making top decisions. The endocrine glands respond to thoughts, not only to physical exercises. So if you doubt, the pituitary will respond accordingly. If you fear, the pituitary will correspond accordingly. So healthy living is having the right kind of emotion, and a primary emotion. So watch your thought pictures, because thoughts come as pictures. When you didn't notice the picture, you weren't aware of the thought. Then it takes control. The pituitary gland responds to all our thought currents. So we have to cultivate positive emotions. That will produce the maximum number of hormones. See, as soon as you fear, the pituitary creates trouble. And we have to have faith. All religions are founded on this faith or belief in this higher perfection, this God. And the fact that God knows what to do for you at the right time and everything will be all right. That Julian of Norwich statement, all will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well. Even despite the fact that when you examine her life, it didn't look well. In order to create, but the inner world was joyful, you see. So in order to create more confidence, you have to trust your body because the divine has equipped it perfectly. It's a complex, perfect machine. Life can be called, yes, you can say it's DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, in the nucleus of the cell, but DNA means all the possibilities which we could ever need for our lives. This is already present in every cell of our body. The key to your entire happiness is contained in every single cell of the body, which runs on intelligence. So there are two layers of the mind, of course, but unless they both coincide, some part of the body will break down. The two levels of the mind will be the unconscious and the conscious. And we have to affect the one by introducing something pleasant in the first one. And all the development you'll ever have is already inside you. So you have to learn to play the right tape or the right CD, the old language was tape, the right recording. Then all your troubles will be over. You just hand it over to the pituitary. You have to understand that the body is actually the organic temple of God, not made with bricks and mortar, but made from flesh and blood. And the body is therefore God's temple, God's housing, God's place, God's palace. When you believe that God is within, the pituitary will be able to take over and do its work properly. So we have to assert something like this. God has made me for a purpose, which only I can fulfill. I'll find my own level and do the job for which I was created. And that's what I tell children. Examine your fingerprints. They are unique. Examine your DNA. It's unique because there's a purpose. And the moment you start disliking your neighbor or your circumstance or some politics that happened somewhere, functional disease is already on the way. For instance, if the ear that doesn't want to hear, the eye that doesn't want to see, that will produce its effect. So if you harbor hatred, the heart will hate the blood. The pituitary will find the weakest part of the body to use as a dumping ground for wrong or excess hormones. And so when a person complains of something, well, there's only one way to help. Remember, God is already inside, doesn't need your help, makes the person harmonious inside. Put your positive expressions, whatever they may be, and affirm that God is right, doing the right thing, directing all your energy from within, like the emperor within the city, in the 11-gated city. Every thought will manifest in its appropriate way. You know, there's the author Louise Hayes, who has matched your thoughts or feelings, negative feelings, with a particular organ of the body. And so the reverse is also true. When you make a tone of the thought, refine it, then the body and every organ of the body becomes equivalently toned and healthy. And apart from anything else, I'm looking at my computer which says low battery. So we'll leave it there for this evening. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swami.
Swami.